Hey, God bless and thanks for joining us once again, whether you're just listening to the audio portion or if you're watching us wherever you're watching us, whether it be Facebook, YouTube, all the other podcast places that we're at. I don't know. Pastor Kerry will get with you on that. But Pastor Kerry, you doing good?
I'm doing good, sir. And yourself?
Doing great, man.
Good.
Just kind of hurt about the Elite Eight that Texas Tech got into.
I know, man. My Michigan boys lost too.
Really?
Yeah, they lost to Auburn.
Oh, wow.
So,
Oh,
yeah.
wow. Yeah, but the thing is, it's like Charles Barkley said, it would have been better if we would have lost by 20 than to lose in 2 minutes when we were up by 9 or something.
Those of you who play sports know what I'm about to say. If you saw the game, I don't feel like Florida beat us. I feel like we lost.
That's what Charles said.
We
Beat yourselves.
We should have won that game. That's why it's so much more difficult to deal with.
UFC, man, because I was like, oh yeah, we got it. So I just switched over UFC, and then Angela's like, Tech lost. I was like, what?
Yeah, it was tough, man. That was tough to watch.
Oh well,
it was tough to watch.
All right, man. So we're talking about creative leadership.
Yes, sir.
Man, this is going to be the third one because it's just so good. But we've talked about, we recap. We've talked about creative killers. We talk about how to become creative again. We talked about creativity in general, how God was creative, how God called us to be creative, how he created everything in a creative way. And if you just look around you, I mean, look at the animal, look at the sky, look at people.
Yeah.
God was creative, man.
Yeah.
Look at I like Angela and I sometimes are people watchers. Sometimes we like going to Starbucks early in the morning where my daughter works, like around 7 or 8 when we're not at the gym, and we're eating breakfast there. And just so you got people that are working, that are going to school, that are just all walks of life, couples, singles, young people, old people, and we're just like, God is creative, man.
Yeah.
So anyway,
Absolutely.
We talked about creative killers. There are creative killers. Mm-hmm. We talked about that. You can go back and watch these if you want. Part 2 and 3 of those. We talked about how to become creative again, taking time to refuel, doing something that you like, resting somehow. And then we talked about getting intentional about your creativity, and that's big time, man.
Yes, sir.
That is big time.
Yes,
you
sir.
have got to be creative. You've got to be intentional. In everything in your life. If you want to do great things in sports, your health, whatever, you have got to be intentional. Same thing with being creative. You have got to, it's just not going to just fall on your lap. You have got to be intentional.
Yes, sir.
One of the things that we did this year to be intentional was, number one, we started that leadership series because we intentionally wanted our next generation to get trained up. And the next thing that we did was we were intentional about getting them to a creative event, which was C3 this year, and we took 29 people. That was awesome, man.
Yes, sir.
And it's working. It's working because all of a sudden I'm seeing people within our congregation begin to flow in those creative juices, that we knew they had all this time. So we talked about taking a social media friend inventory, clean it up, hang out with creative people, not analytical people, changing your environment, research other ministries, studying your community and church, asking God for a vision and direction and wisdom in that area, which is probably going to be the first thing. We talked about how God will give us ideas and intentions and just some things that I shared concerning my 2020 to 2024 experience. But you can follow us on by getting this downloaded. You can go to mnvlubbock.org, and there you'll see this cover right here. And you can just download it, and you'll know what we're talking about. You'll get all these notes that I just mentioned. But Pastor Kerry, let's get started wherever you want to get started now, man.
Yes, sir. I wanted to go back and kind of like transition to the next subtitle that you had here. Begin to creatively lead where God directs.
Yeah.
That's key.
Yeah.
Because I believe it's so important that we begin to creatively lead where He directs us.
That's right.
And because when you flow in your lane, as we talked about, for the month of March, and it's amazing how when you're where God leads you, the creativity that just happens.
It flows.
So like, for example, if I can just use me for a personal example, like, youth ministry, whenever I started youth ministry, I knew that's where God was directing me. Mm-hmm. So like the creativity just flowed honestly, like naturally, because that's where God was leading me.
Yeah.
That's where He was directing me.
You could see
so
it.
because of it, the creativity was just from right out the gate.
Yeah.
Right. Up until I believe the day we transitioned out. And so I believe it's important when we're being creative, it really flows. And it's like we've said this, it almost seems like it's just naturally easy because you're where God directs you. And we've talked about this in previous episodes. Creativity is what? It's God invented it, Jesus modeled it, and the Holy Spirit empowers it. So when you're being led by God, man, the Holy Spirit is empowering you with the creativity because, again, in everything that we do, we're all about reaching people, building God's kingdom, right? And so he's going to give us the creative ideas to reaching the people that he has directed us to, right?
That's right.
So if it's teenagers, young adults, worship pastors, pastors in general, like God, where God directs you, he's going to give you the creative ideas. A perfect example of that was with Pastor Furman and Debbie. If you,
I was about to say, man.
The pizza thing that they did. I wasn't able to be here because my father-in-law was in the hospital, but I thought that was a genius idea on how to associate and equip marriages by cooking a pizza together and how he incorporated everything. But I love what he said the Sunday before he did that.
Yeah.
He said, I've realized I need to stay in my lane.
That's right.
Which is working with married couples.
That's
and when
right.
God directs you somewhere, the creativity just flows. You know, it's just instant. It's just natural because that's where God directs you.
Exactly.
I look at the guy who's behind that computer over there and running all the sound and everything for us, Adam. He knows where God has called him. And so when God directs him,
does his stuff,
it just
dude.
naturally flows for him, right? Like you see it all the time up here. Like there's stuff that he does that he just has creative ideas and creative solutions to, hey, we can do this, we can do that, da 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 da. But because that's where God has directed him, so he can be creative and lead where God directs him.
Exactly.
And so some of the points that you had here were build and work with the creative team. Why is that important? Because we talked about this a little bit last week. Ministry was never meant to be done solo.
That's right.
It's never meant to be done by yourself. I mean, you're going to burn out. You're going to get frustrated. You're going to realize that, man, this is way too much to carry on my own. And I brought MJ today because I shared that example last week because remember MJ, I shared that story about MJ last week. He said and when he was starting out with the Bulls that he tried to do everything on his own. And it was when he got Scottie Pippen and some of the other guys like Rodman and them, he realized that the coach said, look, you don't have to do this on your own no more. And when he started trusting in his teammates and pushing them, and obviously, you know, you got the greatest of all time. Exactly. But I believe it's important that you build and work with, because you can build your team, but the way you build them is by working with them.
Working with them.
Right? You got to invest into your team, you know, teach them. You know, I'm pretty sure if you follow the Creative Faith social media, we have a lineup of people who do promotions the week of service. So like yesterday was Rachel's.
Yeah,
and I don't know if you saw the one that she did.
Yeah, that's really how she drives too, bro.
I believe that 100%, man. I feel so bad for Nelson and Sophie.
Yeah, poor Sophie, man.
I thought she was gonna go through the roof of that truck, man. But what I love about that is, you know, every day the week of it's somebody different, and so you can see the different aspects leading up to Saturday, right? And so,
and speaking of that, pray for me, man, because one of those young ladies is about to make one, and she asked me to be in it, and she's asking me to break dance, bro. You know how long it's been since I've done that? So I'm going home. I'm gonna start practicing I'm looking for cardboard, and I'm gonna start practicing some break dance moves. So anyway, I have no idea what she's gonna make me do.
With that being said, you know, I love what John Cleese said. He said, going about, you know, building and working with a creative team, he said, if you want creative workers, give them enough time to play.
Wow.
And I think that's powerful because when it comes to creativity, I think one of the reasons why a lot of people want to be around and flow in their creativity is because they're given that opportunity, right?
That's right.
Which is something that I loved about this place is like there was no real lid in a sense.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong, I knew the standard. I knew what was appropriate, what was not appropriate, what was excellence, what was not excellence, what was too far, what was, you know what I'm saying?
Exactly.
And so, but I was given the opportunity to, in a sense, play. And so if you want creative workers, leaders, you got to be willing to give them enough time to play. Don't give them a one and done and bench them the rest of the time. You got to give them enough time to work with them and build them. You know what I'm saying? To develop them. Because if you want a creative team, that's what comes with it. I do believe, like you said, you got to choose the right teammates. some things you want to look at that you pointed out was their attitude, their commitment, and their ability, and most importantly, are they saved?
Yeah.
You know, you want people, obviously in the ministry, you want people around you who are
Yeah.
saved, not just verbally say they're
Yeah.
Christians, but you see the evidence, the fruit in their everyday lives.
Exactly. And Pastor Kerry, you mentioned these, their attitude, their commitment, their ability, are they saved? I can work with all of these, but the one that's just so difficult is the attitude, man. That just can make or break a team.
It really
man.
can.
I mean, so you've got to check your attitude as a creative leader. You've got to ask yourself, what kind of attitude am I putting out there when I get together with the team, when I'm doing this, when I'm doing that? And a good leader will even say, you know what, I had a bad attitude and I said this, I should. A good leader will come back and say, hey guys, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. There was no call for that. I was going through this or that, or I didn't have my coffee, whatever. But don't make a habit of doing it all the time. And to say, hey, you know what, I was just in my feelings. I know I said, oh, nobody cares about me, blah, 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 blah. That's attitude, bro, that doesn't need to come to be part of the team. You can work with all these, but if you can't get over attitude, man, sometimes you just have to call that out, man, and that's tough. But you have to begin to say, hey, look, what is going on? Is this going to change, or how can we help you, whatever? Because attitude is a big one, man.
Yeah, I believe attitude is key, right? When it comes to a creative team, because you can have an all-star team.
That's right.
Right, you can have an all-star team with an Antonio Brown in the locker room. An all-star team with the Terrell Owens in the locker room.
That's right.
Right.
That's right.
And I could go on and on using sports examples, right? But you can have a phenomenal creative team around you, but it just takes one person with a horrible attitude. And it's amazing how
That's right.
if we don't get that in check,
Yeah.
it like literally is poison and it filters to the rest of the team.
Exactly.
Because
it's a creative killer, man.
it really is. And so you'll have the, man, let's do this. And you got, 9 out of 10, but that one person's like, I just think it's stupid. I don't think it's worth the
rolling their
investment. I
eyes
just,
or
I think it's too much. It's too much. It's not who we are.
Grumbling.
And so, that can be a huge thing. So, their attitude usually reveals the next thing, their commitment.
That's right.
In all honesty.
That's right.
It'll reveal their commitment, and I do believe that it also reveals, their ability to really contribute to the overall vision where God has led you.
Exactly.
All the more reason to check the fruit, check
Exactly.
the evidence when you're adding people to your creative team, leaders out there.
Exactly.
Because creativity is so important to any aspect, whether it's ministry, business, whatever it is that you're doing.
Exactly.
Because like we've said, creativity isn't just for the arts, it's problem solving and it's so many other things, right?
Exactly.
So you definitely want to make sure you got people on your team who have the right attitude, their commitment is right, and they're actually bringing something to the table.
Exactly.
You know what I'm saying? The next subtopic you had here, man, was creatively communicating with your team. Now, this is important.
This is concerning the attitude of the leader over the team.
This is important when it comes to leading a team, especially a creative team, because, again, your tone sets the tone.
That's right.
Your tone sets the tone. You go into, I playing basketball growing up, man, I had a high school coach who knew how to set the tone with his tone in the locker room.
Yeah.
Like you knew, hey, let's go play.
Yeah.
Right? We're going to go play.
Yeah.
And it's not time to play around, it's time to play. But I believe as leaders, you got to be creative, when you communicate with your team, and it starts with your tone.
Exactly.
You also had your attitude.
Yeah.
Okay, that's huge.
For the leader, it's big time, man.
It's huge, because, the attitude, your attitude is what's going to be what others are going to see.
Exactly.
And they're going to go off of that in a
Exactly.
sense.
Yeah.
So it's like, well, if he doesn't care, why should I care?
Exactly.
If he's going to be lazy about it, I'm going to be lazy about it. If
Exactly.
he shows no interest, if he doesn't seem excited about it, I'm not going to be excited about it, right? And so it's all about, when you're talking to people, you're communicating, you got to make sure your tone is right, your attitude is right. Another thing that you put here is your praise towards them.
Yeah,
Talk a little bit about that, man.
Well, a lot of times, sometimes as leaders, I know myself, I'm always striving to get things perfect, and I got to stop that, and I've worked on that. And so sometimes when you get focused on that, you're always like, okay, man, in the back of your mind, I mean, service was great, things went well, but there's always something you could have improved on.
Yeah.
And as leaders, sometimes we just focus on that.
Yep.
And we always say that to our team is, man, we should have done this. Man, we could have done this. Man, we failed on this area. But we never talk about the great things that happened. So I think we need to focus on both. We need to say, hey, you guys did a phenomenal job. This was great. That was awesome. Man, and this has improved big time.
Yeah.
But let's just work on this here. But sometimes we do the opposite. We
Yeah.
put so much focus on all the things that didn't go right that we don't focus on all the things that we did do good.
Yeah.
For example, one of the things that like you mentioned, Pastor Furman and Debbie, when that pizza thing came together and we had a great time, I told Angela it was wonderful. I sat back and, man, it was phenomenal. And I told him that night, I said, man, this was great. You guys did a great job. I told Kayla and Andres, everybody was involved. And then he had this class. They started the 6 weeks class. He did a phenomenal job on the first session. And I've heard people talk about it too. And I sent him a text yesterday, and I said, bro, you did a phenomenal job this first session, man. Things are going great, man.
Yeah.
And he told me that. He told me in text back, he said, he goes, I just realized it's how you preached. We got to stay in our lane. Once I got back into my lane, man, this thing is just flowing creatively,
exactly. Yeah.
So that's what I meant about that. And then the equal treatment part.
Yeah.
One thing that I've seen leaders do sometimes is they have their favorites, and you shouldn't. And sometimes you can display that, where you're like, you can't treat people differently on the team. Everybody's got to have equal treatment. And yeah, you may flow with somebody else more, and you may hang out with somebody else more. But when it comes to the team, everybody should have the same treatment.
Right.
Don't be leaning more for the other or not so much for the other. There's got to be equal treatment, man.
Right.
Got to be.
100%. I wanted to go back and piggyback off of, your praise towards them and share an example. We had our Creative Faith Conference at the beginning of last month, right? And whatchamacallit, there was a lot of people who were, honestly just coming up to me like, man, awesome job this weekend, right? And I went up and I talked to Andrew Sunday after service. And I pulled him aside and I said, look, bro, I know a lot of people have been kind of like recognizing me and giving me a lot of credit, but honestly, man, I couldn't have done this weekend without you.
Yeah.
And I don't want to continue doing this without you. You know what I'm
That's
saying?
good.
And I mean that,
That's
dude.
good.
And I really,
That's
really
good.
mean that. I was like,
That's
I may
good.
get a lot of the praise and credit, but honestly,
Dude.
bro, I couldn't do this without you, nor do I want to.
That's
And
good.
you could just see in his expression,
Yeah.
like he really
Yeah.
appreciated that. And I think when it comes to praise, it's speaking words of life into people.
Wow.
You know
That's
what I'm
good.
saying?
That's right.
Because
That's
you
right.
don't
It
know
is.
what kind
It
of
is.
day the people
It is.
have when they showed up to help you build what God has put in front of you.
Exactly.
And sometimes all it takes is a word of encouragement.
Exactly.
Just really speaking life into someone, and it just,
Exactly.
And so going back to that, I really believe it's so important that you speak words of life into your team. You praise them.
Yeah.
You give them credit. Don't be afraid to give credit away. Like seriously, I've never understood
right.
why leaders don't like doing that. I just really don't get it. I just think that's so important.
Yeah.
Even with someone like, Sophie.
Yeah.
For those of you who don't know who Sophie, she's 13 years old and she sings. She's part of the Creative Faith worship team that we have on Saturday nights.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I really, like you said, be intentional, really make the effort every time I see her. It's like, you know what, you're my favorite singer.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
You're just doing an awesome job.
yeah.
And it's not just, smoke. I genuinely mean that.
Yeah.
And I just want her to know, like, hey, we believe in you.
That's
Not
right.
just me, but the whole church does.
right.
We believe in you. We're confident in you. We're
Yeah.
behind you. We're supporting you. That's what it's all about.
Gotta
man.
build 'em up,
You
man.
got to build them up, especially at that age.
That's
right. Build them up, build their self-esteem and confidence. So
But don't be fooled, man. She's up there. She's shy. She's
I know.
fragile. She's
I've
just this
heard.
little bitty girl. But she is a wrestler, man.
That's what I've heard.
She is a wrestler. But then come to praise, man. She's just sweet thing,
Yeah,
little thing.
exactly.
But- and hey, I just heard another chapter from the book of Andrew, man. That's awesome, bro. That is so awesome. Chapter
the
10
book of Andrew.
of the
we
book
all,
of
we all got
Andrew,
we
man.
all got an Andrew. But you go on to
Awesome.
talk about personal care. I'm a firm believer also in like meetings, staff meetings, and
Yeah.
maybe you can't meet in person, but the cool thing that we all learned through the pandemic is that you can meet virtually with people, right? So definitely have meetings to communicate with your team.
Yeah.
and be creative and fun, not just business. And so I love that because, like, for example, let me talk a little bit about the pandemic. I've said this numerous times, and I'll repeat myself, but the pandemic was one of my funnest times in ministry because it really stretched me creatively to do things really, really outside the box.
That's right.
And so, but even when I met with the team and I met with the teenagers, I really tried my best, again, to flow where I was at and just be fun with it too, because it was already a wild time for everybody. Yeah. And so, I believe that you got to be creative with your meetings, and I think that's cool, man. I think you just build the morale and stuff like that. So, I think that's important.
Yeah, there's times where you got to have those staff meetings, of course. You got to have those organization meetings, things like that. You got to get things set up, and sometimes you got to direct and all these things, and it can become monotonous. But sometimes you got to just get together and go out and do something together, or just hang out and barbecue, or just relax. Don't mention anything about business or anything unless it's in a fun way, creative way.
Yeah.
But man, sometimes you just have to hang out, and I think that's what I enjoy sometimes. Hanging out with Pastor, and in the past when we used to get together with other people, sometimes. Me being the person that okay, we got to get this done. We got to order. We got a timeline. We got to I'm just so picky on that, and then Pastor would come out like, hey, let's just hang out, and I'm just like, we're not getting anything done.
Right.
But in reality, we were.
Yeah.
In reality, it was the best thing that we could have done, is just get together, laugh, eat some burritos together, and just chill. That was the best thing we could have done, other than just business,
Yeah.
And for a while there, my drive was like, okay, if we're not being productive, if we're not getting, then this is not holy, this is not right. So sometimes you just gotta, hey, we didn't get anything done, we didn't organize, we didn't plan, but we just relax. And that's where we build relationships. That's when we can build relationships.
And a lot of times, some of your most creative ideas will come from those fun gatherings.
That's right.
So, for example, again, going back to the youth ministry days, whenever we first started, I would have my meetings at Main Event, bowling, playing arcade video games, and when we would finally sit down to talk, it was like, you know what, we should do this. This is a great idea. Or it's going to Dion's, eating and having a pizza or a sub, whatever your choice is. And it's funny how just over a meal, just talking about what happened this weekend, it eventually leads to, okay, so I think we should do something like this with the teenager, right? So be creative with your communications, especially with your staff meetings. Don't just come in and be like, all right, sit down. Like, no one wants to go down. There's no fun in that. And so one of the ways that I recommend doing it, this is just my personal preference, something that I do with our creative meetings. I have, there's different phases. There's the dream phase. There's the dream phase, the define phase, the design phase, the delegate phase, and the do phase. The dream phase is basically all the ideas on the board, no matter how small or big, and there's no negativity in that meeting, right? There's no negatives. And then there's the define phase. Okay, what are we really going to do? What can we really do? I mean, there's been times where I'll be like, yo, let's bring in some elephants. And then we come back to circle, like, look, we can't really bring in elephants, right? And then there's the design stage where it's like, okay, how are we going to make that work? And then there's the delegate stage where you get people involved, and then there you go out and do. So that's just an idea when you have your next creative meeting.
Exactly. And these take time, but man, listen, Pastor Kerry, I'm sorry, man, but I think we're going to have to do a part 4, bro.
We did 2 subtitles today.
Yeah, I think we're going to have to do part 4.
We got 3 more to go.
Yeah, because this is good. The creative vision, the requirements of creativity, and then the creative challenge, man. I agree. I think we need to do a part 4, and that way we'll finish up with this, and then get into building a team, man. Yes, sir. Building a team. So anyway. I
want to share one quote. Yeah. Maybe you can share something on it. One of my favorite creators of all time, obviously Jesus, but was Walt Disney. I mean, you go in my office, you see Mickey Mouse stuff in there. You see even some Walt Disney stuff in there, because I really was drawn to his creativity and his, just how he did things. But something he said that stuck with me, and I wanted to make sure I shared it today. He said, Disneyland will never be completed. It will continue to grow as long as there is imagination left in the world.
Wow.
And I love that because
That's
like
good.
there was never an intention for Disneyland to get to like a specific point and stop. As long as there was imagination, creativity, it's going to continue to grow
Exactly.
every single year.
Exactly.
And so if you look at that, you see that because they're always adding something. They're always adding a new park. They're always adding a new attraction. Why? Because it's never completed. And I believe that is the same for the church, even more. Like we shouldn't get to the point like, all right, we reached this milestone and then chill.
Exactly.
We should, as long as there's creativity within us and the Holy Spirit empowers it, we should be constantly, moving forward and coming up with new things because God is doing a new thing, right? That's what Scripture teaches us. So I love what he says, engage an unstoppable imagination to fuel your creativity.
Exactly.
So let that be something that you take to
And
heart.
if you notice, worship leaders, pastors, just every aspect of ministry, the enemy comes against us. The enemy tries to put roadblocks. All kinds of things happen. Life happens. Everything is meant to try to keep us from having a big imagination. Imagination is not just living in the fantasy world, but imagination is like clips, like preview clips, bits of nuggets that God places in our heart and in our minds to kind of give us a glimpse of what could happen if we seek Him, if we press on that, if we don't let all these things keep us from being creative, And there's things that life brings to us, It could be sickness, it could be financial setback, it could be relationship issues, it could be different things like that sometimes will come at you. And it'll try to keep you from becoming or having that imagination anymore. So you lose your creative ability to preach, to have new songs, to lead churches, teams, whatever. And you're just like, I just don't have it in me. And sometimes we need to understand that that's what the enemy's trying to do, is to keep us from imagining. What does the word say? He wants to bless us abundantly above all that we could ever even imagine or fathom, imagine. In other words, he wants to try to steal our imagination because we are to become creative in the kingdom.
That's right.
Amen?
Yes, sir.
So anyway, that's my spiel. I'll let you finish it off,
sir.
and then we'll come back next week.
Yes, we'll come back next week for part 4 of creative leadership. And we hope you guys have been enjoying this. Don't forget, you can catch this every Thursday, 7 p.m. If you want to see the video version of it, you can catch it on our Facebook page, Ministerios Una Vida. If you haven't liked that, go ahead and like that page, and you can follow along with our ministry's doing. Or you can catch us on our YouTube channel. If you have not subscribed to our YouTube channel, go ahead and subscribe to that channel, be part of that community as well. Again, 7 p.m. is when we do our English one. And then you can, if you want to listen to this format, you can catch it on any podcast platform, whether it's Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, pretty much anywhere that has the podcast platform, you can subscribe to the New Life podcast, all right? And again, this goes out live every Thursday at 7 p.m. Well, we thank y'all for tuning in. Again, if you want all these notes that we're talking about, you can go to mnvlubbock.org. You'll see the New Life Leadership graphic. You just click on it, and it'll be something that says go to link, and when you click that, it'll go straight to everything. That's what I was following along right here today. So love you guys. God bless y'all, and we'll see you guys next week.
God bless.